On this episode, we're joined by Matthew Cumber, who is the Managing Director of Countrywide Surveying. Now, there's been a lot of focus in recent years on how technology can improve the home buying process, particularly when it comes to lending and conveyancing. One area that's equally as important, but I think has had a bit less attention, is surveying. So today we're going to discuss how Countrywide are transforming their business through the use of new technology and what the future holds for the world of surveying. So Matthew, first of all, thanks for joining us today. For those that aren't familiar with Countrywide Surveying as a business, although I guess the clue's in the name, can you give us a bit of background about what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm the Managing Director of Countrywide Surveying Services, and Countrywide Surveying Services, clues in the name, is owned by the Countrywide Group, which is up until recently stood aside as Countrywide, but back in March, the company was wholly bought out by the Connells Group. So we're now part of the Connells Group, which is an even bigger property company that is collectively owned by the Skipton Building Society. So we're part of that family now. From a surveying perspective, I have the responsibility and pleasure of managing around 600 to 700 colleagues, of which 450 of them are qualified surveyors. So predominantly what happens is that our business is based on contractual relationships with clients, mainly lenders, and we go out and we carry out valuations on behalf of our clients, the lenders, for generally mortgage lending purposes. Obviously there's a bit of survey and building survey and other work that we do as well, but that's I suppose that's what we do as a business, and that's what we do day in and day out.
Before we sort of dive into the business in a bit more depth and talk about technology, what's your personal background and how did you come to be MD of Countrywide Surveying?
Probably by a little bit of a mistake, really. I started off in a lender. I'd worked for a number of years for what was the Halifax Group and the different parts of the Halifax, and then obviously when Lloyds bought the Halifax as part of the Lloyds Bank, mainly in intermediary. So I was looking after brokers basically. So I've got an understanding of what goes on with lenders. I've got an understanding of what the needs of the broker community and the pressures that they're under as well. And then part of the Lloyds Group, I took a role with Collies, and Collies was a surveying firm that was owned by Lloyds Group. Subsequently, they have sort of sold that on. That's how I got into surveying, really. And then one of my clients, when I was part of Lloyds Group for Collies, was Countrywide. And I ended up joining Countrywide Surveyors about 6 years ago in a different director position, looking after the surveyors. And in 2020, I was made Managing Director. So it's a good year to be made Managing Director.
Yes, it's an interesting one, and we'll come on to that in a bit. So you've got over 6 years experience in the surveying world then. How has technology changed how you deliver surveys over that period?
I think there's been a big appetite to try to make the journey for customers a lot better and clearer and more understandable than it's been for years. In the industry, it's a well-known fact that when people buy properties, they hardly ever take a survey. About 1 in 5 people buying properties takes it, and I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that consumers don't necessarily understand what they're buying, what they're paying for. They think the valuation that the lender's doing provides them with everything they need, and it doesn't. But I think the industry as a whole hasn't been great about keeping ahead of what the consumer wants, because up until maybe 2 years ago, Mark, if you bought a survey, you got a paper copy. It was very thick binder. It was all done over the sort of telephone. Nothing was online. I think over the past couple of years, and particularly with obviously what's happened in 2020, that's accelerated. That's accelerated quite quickly. We have embraced technology far more than we've ever done in the previous 5 to 6 years. And I think it's been accelerated because of this situation. And what we're trying to do with technology, and it's not always been as successful as it should be, is one, give consumers better choice of products they're buying. So that if they want to buy a survey product, there's something that feels better, looks better. They can get it online. They can get it via email. They don't necessarily have to always speak to someone. They can purchase that property through online methodologies that they're doing now with the lenders and with brokers. And then when they were coming out of that, it got very clunky. Got very clunky with surveys, got very clunky with conveyancers. And I think what we're trying to do with technology more so now is trying to link all those different elements to make it smooth as possible. Less hassle, the hassle factor to go.
Yes. I think I had a survey, you'll be pleased to know, on my first house that we bought about 10 years ago. And I do remember getting that thick binder in the post, and a couple of, a week or so later. And it wasn't delivered over email, it wasn't over a portal, etc. So has that changed now? Are they
yes, it has. We're not wholly there, but the digital choice of getting it digitally is there now, not just through us, but with other surveying firms. And I think what also has happened as well is that when you got that thick binder, when you're looking through that, you're thinking, what on earth is all this saying? It's saying I couldn't move the furniture, I couldn't do this. There's a lot of sort of situations where we're saying we couldn't look at that properly enough because something was in the way, or it was sunny that day, so therefore we couldn't tell whether there was any damp. There's a lot of those. Some of those elements you can't affect, but also I think what's probably happened between what you experience and what we're experiencing now is there's an awful lot more data available. There's an awful lot more data available to go into a survey that doesn't necessarily just have to be what that surveyor saw on that day. We can tell consumers now whether those properties are in a flood risk area, whether they're likely to be any subsidence, all based on data. And that hasn't really been used. It's probably been available, but the surveying industry has probably just not grasped the fact of what the purpose of this data is. Yes. And again, we're only at the start of that journey. And it's quite exciting actually to be out there, to be saying, right, this is the future where we can help people when they're buying their properties.
It did always strike me, because I think sometimes you'd again from experience, you'd get all the way through to conveyancing quite late in the process, and then these reports would be run with automated lookups about flood, etc. It always did sort of strike me that, why didn't that happen at the beginning? Like, that would have been really useful to know that before I sort of fully committed at that point. So I guess if we unpack the future of surveys, so there's probably a few components. One, the customer experience and how they experience the end result of that survey. We can talk about that. And I guess the other is how you deliver that survey. And I would imagine, unless you get AI-driven robots in future to go and look at properties, there's always going to be that human element of the surveyor going and looking. So how do you see that kind of the process of creating the surveys being changed by?
It's a really good question, and one that we've been asking ourselves now for a number of years. And again, what's happened last year and this year with the situation we find ourselves in is that it's driven change a lot more quickly. So there's two elements to our business and two elements to what a customer is wanting, really. One is that their lender needs a valuation done. So that's the lender that then instructs that valuation. We carry out valuations on their behalf. Now, if I take that bit first, in terms of technology, what's happened there is that everyone will have heard of AVMs. Everyone understands what an AVM is. And everybody probably now understands what a desktop is. And these are all methodologies where the actual surveyor isn't coming out round the property. They're getting the data they need to make the valuation decision they need for the lender to provide that information as quick as possible. And we do more desktops now than we did 2 years ago, because the data is accurate, the data is easily available, and our people can make quick decisions to help lenders make offers quickly for consumers. That will grow. Data's available, videos available, drones are available. Everything is available to make decisions from the comfort of a surveyor's own home. Now, it won't wholly go that way. It can't, because nothing can ever be eyes on the prize, as we call it in the surveying world. You physically look at it. But the more we move into a technology world where the data is available and that quick decisions can be made, then we will recognise that and move with the times. The other element is surveys. So this is where the consumer, i.e. you, then say to us, I want a survey done for me, please. And that is moving to more online, as we talked about, more choice, more products available, because there's only ever really been one product available, and that's a home buyer's report. But each company now is being told by the RICS that they are allowed to create their own products as long as the standards fit in line with the standards published by the RICS. They can have different products to suit those standards, and that's exactly what's happened. It's competition, and that's what you need in a market. You need competition to give consumer choice, and you'll see that accelerate again over the next 12 months very quickly.
I'd be interested to know, because obviously a big part of what you're delivering for lenders is some certainty around the asset and the security. I guess with a desktop valuation, sort of implicitly, it'd be useful, I think, just to sort of talk through how that works in practice. But I'd be interested to know Have you seen a big shift in attitude from lenders over the last year, given the events of the last sort of 15 months or so, and how it works in practice?
Yeah, I suppose the first thing to say really is when we went into that first situation of not being able to physically inspect properties, all lenders moved to a desktop situation. Now, there's certain risk parameters within those agreed limits. So, for example, let's say, just briefly out there, a lender said you can go up to 75% doing on a desktop. But if it's 85%, you've got to wait till your surveyor can go back out there and physically inspect it. So there's different ranges within it. And then when we got out to be able to physically inspect properties again, some lenders moved back to the positions they were in. Some took a halfway house. Some said, I like this desktop browse.
Really? Okay.
It speeds things up. So there's a whole range of different lenders out there doing different things, and we will work with every single one of them to provide them with, I suppose, the comfort and reassurance that we are valuing properties for their asset purposes that they need.
And how has your team kind of adapted over the last year?
Some of our surveyors, clearly from change, they're all human beings, took a lot of time to change. Some of them grasped it quickly. All range of human reactions to when you're asking people to change. And what we had to do, because the systems weren't set up to do what we call desktops, we created and built a completely different model to be able to create a value on a desktop basis. So we get the same information through from a lender, but what we did is we basically went out to a lot of data providers and took in lots of different levels of data to make the surveyor's job as easy as possible, so that everything is their fingertips on one page to be able to make the decision of, hang on a minute, does this property hit the value? Have I got the right level of comparables? And if you think about it, Mark, as well, is that whether they do a physical or whether they do a desktop, they're still using the same comparables. It's the same properties that sold in the street, a month ago behind that they're using. That doesn't change. It's just giving the surveyor the comfort to say, I've got all the data I need to be able to make that assessment of value. And to add the next stage to it, and what we do as well is that, let's say that I don't know whether I can achieve that value on that property. I really like to see inside the property. Well, there's a link, Mr. Consumer, who's sitting in his house. Can you click on that, please, and take us around the property on a phone?
Interesting. Okay, interesting.
That's the next stage. I've probably given away our secrets of our next development and innovations there,
but press. It's,
but that's the way it will go.
Yes, that's been interesting. So we do quite a lot of stuff in the insurance market as well, and similarly that they're sending out loss adjusters or claims handlers to go and look in person at if there's a house insurance claim. There has been a trend towards that as well, where they get a link and they can record a video or have a live, if it's something a bit more complex, if there's a big flood or something, and they can talk the personal insurance company through.
So it's nothing new. That it's out there. But I think the industry that we've been has always, unfortunately, been slightly behind the times for a number of years.
Yes.
Embracing the technology that's available.
Yes. I think, to be fair, that's, it's not just sort of your part of that process, the whole home buying process has historically been a little bit behind the curve. But I think things are changing, especially over the last sort of 18 months or so. The pace of change has increased. Because
it needs to in the whole industry. It needs to get more joined up.
So that's focusing a bit more on the kind of process of how you deliver and how you sort of execute these surveys internally. If you think out to the future of the customer experience, of what's going to change for the customer if I get a survey now compared to 10 years ago, or if you think a few years in the future, how will that change?
I think it's that continued access to better quality data and information. Coming back to your piece of paper, what would you do if you got something on there that you didn't know how to? I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means for me and the decision I need to take. Who do I talk to get that bit of advice? And probably it was the original surveyor that you need to hunt down and find that information out. But I think that the methodologies and the ability through the information that's available needs to be on people's fingertips, and chatbot methodologies of going through, which again is nothing new, but it is new to the surveying world.
Yes.
Getting that information quickly, having that point of contact and that point of reference where they can ask as many questions as they want about the products that they've bought, to give them comfort again about buying their properties. And I think one of the biggest things that you'll be looking at for the future when people buy a survey, why are you buying a survey? You're buying it to understand that, is this property for me worth the money that I'm investing into it? And also as well, you've already probably got ideas about what you want to do to that property. if there is a problem, how much it's going to cost you, all those elements of everything in one place. Now, if you got that survey, you've got access of the products that we've built to say, right, I'll go here to get an electrician report if I need it. I've got a problem here with the windows. I'll just click on here, and everything gives you links into everything that you need in one place.
That's interesting. I do remember, actually, it's not to make this whole episode about my survey from 10 years ago, but it created lots of sort of red flags. We were a bit naive with our first house that we purchased, and I remember calling up when we spoke with the estate agent. They were almost a bit miffed because there are lots of things they're like, we can't comment on this, or this could be this. Or,
yes.
And they were a bit miffed, and they were sort of saying, well, no, you don't have to worry about any of this. But it did raise lots of questions, should we say? So I guess in the future journey, that area, making it a lot more interactive and digital.
It has to be, and it has to be in common English, and it has to be as two people like we are now talking about. This is a problem. How can you? What does that really mean? Because you might be saying there might be a red flag in it on the report. What does that really mean in practice for you? Because the surveyor's job is to warn people as well that could be a problem. But you need to provide everybody with as much information as they possibly can, as quick as they can get hold of it.
So obviously there's been lots of change over the last year or so. Do you think that'll be long lasting and
Yes, I came out probably in an article in one of the industry press not long after we'd seen ourselves in the situation, saying that what this has created is that the industry realizes it can do things in a different way, and it is here to stay, and it will be here to stay. And also I think the pace of change is here to stay as well. It's fair to say that the surveying industry and the home buying industry as well as a whole had potentially been quite clunky and slow to change. I think that's gone. And I think you will see over the next couple of years that the degree of change and the pace of change really speed up. So if someone that's been involved in it like I have for 20 years, where started off when there was no computers and there was paper applications for mortgages, and you'd put the piece of paper in this one printer you used to have to book your time on to produce your mortgage offer, and a hard copy signature, and at the end of that, where we were then to where we will be in a couple of years will be massively different.
I think you mentioned sort of earlier around the different lender attitudes to whether read desktop, etc. And I think probably in the marketplace, as consumers get a bit more switched on, the speed we're seeing at the moment, where everyone's in a rush from a conveyancing perspective to complete by a certain date, speed and efficiency and that experience is becoming a key decision maker, as well as price. At this current sort of moment, people will pay a premium if they're going to complete by a certain time. So do you see that kind of? I guess is that, how do you educate consumers to kind of make that choice?
I'd go back to my days as a when I was looking after mortgage intermediaries, mortgage brokers, and a lot of their choice was around the overall service being provided. It wasn't just on the price. So they knew because that's the job that they do, the professional job. They knew which lenders were able to produce offer quicker than others, and that would, depending on their customer, clearly that made them make their choice. So I think it's always been there. But I think you're absolutely right. There's questions that we've asked ourselves internally that when you get to a position where everybody's really busy and surveying was really busy at the moment, conveyancers are really busy at the moment, would you as a consumer choose to pay a higher premium for getting something done quicker because you need it done quicker, rather than somebody who's got a remortgage and doesn't actually want it done any quicker than by the end of next month they'll do fine, thank you very much.
Yes.
So I do think there will be more and more price differentials out there, and I suppose it's already in the surveying industry now, where you can have different choices of products for price in terms of the degree of depth that the surveyor will go into analysing the property they're looking at. So definitely.
And one new product, kind of choice, I know that you've launched in recent months, is your, I think, Energy Fact.
Energy Fact, it is indeed.
Yeah, and I think if you think about environmental concerns, being driven by lots of things, including pressure from government, I think it's going to be a growing kind of part in future. Can you tell us more about that product?
Yeah, but delighted to. So Energy Fact is a unique product that we built in conjunction with one of our clients, Santander, and Santander offer it to their consumers. Basically, what the product is, it's an ability of somebody to assess the energy efficiency of their property, and again, it calls on a lot of different levels of data that's pulled into the report, and once you've done that and asked numerous level of questions about your property, what bulbs you've got, loft insulation you've got, etc., etc. It comes up with some recommendations for you to change and how much they're likely to cost you to improve, once again, the continued energy efficiency of your property. Now, it's not an EPC where somebody will come and physically look at your property, because it is a degree of self-assessment, but it's something unique out there in the marketplace. And yeah, we've been very innovative in terms of that product. And we will continue to innovate along those lines, because you're absolutely right. Climate change is smacking you in the face. The requirements on the lenders becoming more and more driven by regulation about what they have to do around climate efficiency. And all of us have to come up with ways that we can improve the energy efficiency of all the properties. And that's just, I think for us, it's the start of our increasing again our product portfolio that we're able to offer out to consumers to help.
You mentioned sort of lender requirements around the environment, etc., moving forward. Do you think that's going to be kind of an increasing component of lending decisions?
Yeah, totally. Totally. There's an element where they need to understand what their back book constitutes, their assets that they've already got in terms of every individual property, but also that there is a degree of the more efficient their back book is, the more advantageous terms they may get from the Bank of England in terms of money lending, and that will be passed on to consumers.
Interesting.
So the more energy efficient your property, I think you're seeing products out there, maybe just further advances and products such as those at the moment, but determine on how energy efficient your property is, the cheaper rate that you can get.
That's interesting. We've got in the UK a huge stock of Victorian housing, which I guess isn't hugely energy efficient, all of it, to put it politely.
No, it isn't. And we're probably, if you compare us to the continent, we're probably at a disadvantage of that because of our housing. But saying that, for some people, it might just be an uncomfortable situation that we all have to face into over the next couple of years to improve it. We don't really have much of a choice.
Countrywide Surveying actually appointed Doc9 to do some usability testing and a digital experience audit on one of your products recently.
Home Fact.
Indeed. What was that experience like working with on that audit?
Yeah, really, really good and really pleasing to see the results. We'd never gone into any sort of greater degree of in-depth analysis of the product. We'd relied on your traditional old sort of, I call it old-fashioned, likes of NPS and that marking. So to get that degree of input, what that allows us to do then is that we know we've got a very good product, and it's called Home Fact. I'll say it again, Home Fact. So if people want to buy it, it's called Home Fact.
We'll put a link in the description.
But to get proper analysis of what the consumer says is very, very important. And what it does then is helps to shape and build what the next iteration of that product will be. Because we've been very, very clear about it. And I think that what we spoke about today, really, Mark, is very, very clear about it, is that survey products need to fit what the consumer wants. And if they don't, there's no point selling them. There's no point having them. So Home Fact for us was the start of that journey of change, of actually really getting down to it. So you guys helped us enormously.
Great to hear.
And we may be back for more.
Sounds good. And as part of that project, we got real users in, consumers in and tested, and actually it was the work done remotely. Was that the first time you kind of heard, real users using a product? What was that like as an experience? Well,
I suppose it was challenging and brave of us to do it in the first place, because they could have shot it down in flames, and something that we'd put up there on a flagpole saying, look at our product, isn't it fantastic? But on the other hand, it was absolutely reassuring to hear that we have got the vast majority of it right, but there are some areas to work on, and that's great. If you don't keep doing that, if you don't keep bringing in the actual person that's buying the products and getting their real feedback on whether they think, one, it's value for money or fit for purpose, then you're never going to succeed in business anyway. Yeah.
On a kind of a different note then, so to wrap up, what's on the horizon for Countrywide Surveying and the rest of 2021 and beyond? I
and my sort of senior team have got a very, very simple strategy, and that just constitutes three elements really. We want to continue to build and forge our relationships with our clients. We want to do as many work and surveys and valuations as we can for them and give them the best possible service we can. On On the other hand, I want to grow the number of survey products we do, because come back to what I said at the beginning, really, only 1 in 5 people buy a survey when they buy a property. Need to increase that. We do. And the third part of it, this is probably where sort of the technology element comes in, is to simplify our business. And I put it that way because we still have processes in our business, and we still have daily operational conversations about processes that get in the way of us doing things better, quicker and easier. And the only way to work through those is to look at how we can have technology solutions to improve that. And the consumer won't necessarily see that because it won't be a front end facing technology improvement for them. But for us as a business, it means that we can put more of our investment and more of our effort, therefore, into front end for consumers. If back end things are, as I said, done quicker, simpler and easier.
And that's fairly common across a lot of incumbent financial businesses as well, where a lot of the work we do and have done over recent years, actually there's a front end component, but it's those back end operational processes, stopping the manual lookup, stopping rekeying, systems integration, and that can deliver massive benefits for a company, and sometimes can be more transformative than the flash front end that people publicise. So interesting to hear you're on a sort of similar journey as well.
Absolutely the same as others. I fully expect that. Yeah.
Brilliant. So I feel like I've learned a lot more about the world of surveying now. So thanks.
Good.
Great to meet today and talk that through.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Bill.
Thanks to our audience for joining us.